I'm focused on this spirit cause it keeps me from this fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Teen News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the SAVE Act and some propaganda that or just a repeated talking point that I've heard again and again and again and again about like if we pass this thing, then 21 million people are going to be disfranchised immediately because with eligible voters, there's that many people who don't have readily available access to their birth certificate. And oh my gosh, what about the disparities of the Black community and blah blah blah. And so it's really silly when you actually look at the figure. So I wanted to talk about that today. And so that's probably going to be just about the main thing that we're going to actually focus on. So of course the SAVE Act is something that they're trying to get passed through the Senate, and it's something that's passed through the House, and I'm not sure, I think they announced that some more people are going to be onto it. Trump is really focused on it and wants it passed. Now I think there's like too much Republican hype around it, like we have to get this passed, or it's like acting like I don't know, it could be like there's such an urgency to it. Like Scott Pressler did a video talking about how the American people are going to be so mad if we didn't get this passed, and Trump is really passionate about it. And I just don't think we're going to be taken over by like voter fraud and lose an election because we don't get this passed. You know, if there's that kind of urgency being pushed, that's really overblown from the Republican side. But the idea that if we do pass this, that like women aren't going to be able to register to vote because they got married and their identification is different. It's just really fear mongering that is so puzzling because it's so stupid. And so I've heard some repeated talking points again and again and again and again and again and again and again. So I want to go over those particular talking points. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktunes.com, check different content on my website, articles, reviews, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it just costs a stream. On my site, all that stuff, so you guys can support. Very much appreciate it and appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch and stuff that's available on my website at blacktunes.com, like different t-shirts and mugs and so on, if you would like. I do also have other books that you guys can check out. Some are fiction, nonfiction. One of my nonfiction books are Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. So got different kind of stuff you guys can check out. But I do have a lot of stuff. I like to write, like I got some chapter books and so on. So and stuff for older readers and picture books. So you guys can find out more if you go to blacktunes.com. But there's a link in the description that'll take you to my book website where you guys can check out Bigger, which is a picture book about a little baby dinosaur who dreams of being bigger. So I saw a video today on TikTok of this very popular lawyer couple. I think they got married, and they just do cover stories from a legal perspective and so on. So they decided to talk about the SAVE Act, and they did, a fine video just explaining what it was, and then explaining what, people for it were for, why they were for it, and some of the criticisms about what people are saying who are against it. And so one of the things that they said is a repeated figure that I see again and again. And I'm not bringing them up to shade them, but they just have a big account, and I just want to reiterate that this is a talking point that I've seen a lot. So I noticed yesterday that someone on X had posted this figure as well. And I think he had a pretty big account too, this guy. A lot of followers anyway. It's not huge, it's 11,000. Okay, so I saw he popped in my feed, and he shared this Brennan Center article. So that popped in my feed. So the Brennan Center is the one who did the figure where everyone is like getting it from. So I decided to just kind of go look at the article, and then go click on the actual study that's or the article that they have about the study, and then the fact sheet about the actual study. So let's look at their article, and then we're going to jump into the other article. We're going to hit that link and go through it a little bit. I hope you guys had a great weekend, by the way. Last week, Republican lawmakers in both House and Senate launched a renewed push to pass the SAVE Act, introducing two new bills that advance show your papers. Show your papers. Like, it's so funny that they call it that. And I'm like, where was this energy like during COVID when it's like your vaccine proof and all this stuff? But a requirement for voter registration. The first effort to pass the SAVE Act last year failed in the face of the nationwide public opposition. These new bills are yet another effort to undermine Americans' freedom to vote and to make this unpopular policy the law of the land. In every form, the SAVE Act would require American citizens to show documents like a passport or birth certificate to register to vote. Our research shows that more than 21 million Americans, oh my gosh, 21 million Americans lack ready access of to those documents. Roughly half of the Americans don't even have a passport. Oh my gosh, millions lack access to a paper copy of their birth certificate. The SAVE Act would disenfranchise Americans of all ages and races, but younger voters and voters of color would suffer disproportionately. Likewise, millions of women whose married names aren't on their birth certificates or passports would face extra steps just to make their voices heard. Now, did this seem strange to you that they're like, oh, especially younger voters would be super disenfranchised by this? Because I mean, I can understand if you're like, I don't know, 80 years old and you haven't kept up with those documents and they're somewhere in the abyss and you just don't know where they are. Like that seems like it would be a far greater struggle than like, oh my gosh, all these young people, they're going to be disenfranchised because they don't have ready access to their birth certificate. Well, maybe they don't have ready access to their birth certificate because it's at their mom's house or something. Like it could be that simple. It could really be that simple. But let me read on before we click on that link and actually read a little bit more about the 21 million figure, right? Just like the SAVE Act of 2025, the new SAVE Act proposals would inject chaos into election administration. They would place a massive unfunded burden on the state and local election officials, and they would expose those officials to significant legal risk. The bills would leave it up to local officials to decide whether a voter who lacks one of the specified documents has done enough to prove citizenship. Officials who make an honest mistake could face civil and criminal penalties. An election official could even be punished for registering an eligible American citizen just for failing to collect all the right paperwork at the right time. I read the bill. It doesn't seem like that scary as what they're actually trying to make it out to be. Let me skip down. All versions of the SAVE Act would block millions of American citizens from voting. The new bills each contain unique additional obstacles. The anti-voter provisions in the House new version, formerly titled the Make Elections Great Again Act, are so numerous that they require bullet appointed list. So now the bill requires proof of citizenship, but also proof of residence in order to register, which why wouldn't you? I guess if you're registering to vote, and you're voting in your particular state, wouldn't we want to make sure that, like, if you're voting in Michigan, that you're, I don't know, not really from, I don't know, Tennessee or something, like, so that seems like, I don't know, a very weird thing to get caught up over, I guess. They're like, this could block even more Americans from voting. Roughly 9% of the population has moved within the state in the past year, but many will not update their driver's licenses until they expire. Well, get your stuff together, man. There's lots of things you got to do when you move. Like, the bill would require, and by the way, this is when you register to vote. a lot of people think that all this stuff is like, let me clarify that, because I've talked about the SAVE Act and people are like, it's not hard to show ID. Like when you vote, you need to show ID when you vote. This isn't about when you vote. It's about when you register to vote. So some people were confused about all these talking points. Like I have to bring a passport when I go vote. No, I mean, you can use that as a form of different stuff for forms of identification or whatever, but you can just bring your ID when you vote. This is about when you register to vote. They want you to prove that you are a citizen. And for all this talk of, oh well, if you're a citizen, and we need to make sure that citizens aren't disenfranchised by this law, and making it harder for them to vote or whatever. I'm like, okay, but well, how are we going to make sure that we are upholding the rights of citizens if we don't actually make sure that they are citizens? Like, help me out here. How do we know that they're the citizens? Shouldn't they be like, just say, hey, I am this person who's coming, who, I'm going to register to vote here in these important elections as a citizen. By the way, here's my proof. I am a citizen. It doesn't seem like a hard ask to me. It just doesn't. Like, somebody explain it to me, break it down. The bill would require photo ID to vote, providing a narrow list of acceptable IDs more restrictive than the voter ID laws in every state, but Ohio. For example, the bill prohibits the use of student IDs, even those issued by the state universities, and accept tribal IDs as with an expiration date, even though many tribal IDs do not contain them. Okay, well, one, I guess, figured out, but that's a really dumb thing to complain about, as far as like they don't want to accept the state university IDs. Okay, well, in our last election in my state of Michigan, there was a Chinese national that voted in our election, and we didn't catch it because we're such good detectives in Michigan, and the Secretary of State was just on it. He like tried to kind of undo it, I guess, because he was afraid of getting in trouble. But he voted in the election, and his vote counted just as much as mine did. I am an American citizen who can prove my citizenship, by the way. So when you're like, oh gosh, see, they won't accept state like universities IDs when you go vote, and that's just such a shame. Well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing. Now, this does happen where non-citizens will vote in elections. It just does happen. Is it some kind of like astronomical number? No, I guess. Like, would they say it's rare? Sure, it's rare, but every time they vote, their vote counts just as much as mine, and we should try to make sure that it doesn't happen. Can we make a system where, I guess, nobody ever is getting through those cracks and it's just like perfect? Probably not, but you got to explain to me why we shouldn't make sure that when people register to vote, that we're not making sure that they're citizens. This just seems so wacky to me. Like, when I took my driver's test and stuff, I registered to vote when I got my driver's license and stuff, but I had to have my information about, I got my birth certificate. I brought my birth certificate. I brought my social security card, and I had to have like a proof of where I lived. So I had to have some bills, and stuff. So I think maybe I had like some, I don't know, bill from my college or something like that, where I was going to just, some kind of bill. Because when you're young, you don't have a ton of bills. So I had to have some kind of proof of where I lived to get that information in those documents and stuff. And like, I'm just baffled by these complaints. They seem so dumb, and people are saying them with their full chest. So to me, it's embarrassing to be this upset about this stuff. The legislation would mandate voter roll purges every 30 days, placing erroneous burdens on the election officials and ending the 90-day quiet period that protects voters from being mistakenly thrown off the rolls right before election day. I don't know, 30 days. I guess it seems a little excessive, but I guess I don't also doesn't seem like a huge deal, but they could, I don't know, debate that, I guess, and say, hey, compromise and say, hey, I think 60 is a lot. Let's make it 30's a lot. Let's make it 60 days or something. So, you could compromise there. I'd be fine compromising there, I guess. The bill would prohibit universal mail voting, requiring all male voters to submit an application in order to receive a ballot. That would end the longstanding principal method of voting in 8 states and Washington, D.C. So I was going over this article, reading a little bit to my sister yesterday before I went to church. And so I'm like, I wonder if that's really the opposition trying to get rid of like mail-in voting. And she's like, maybe that is, because I can't imagine all this other stuff being a big deal, other than that they just don't want it to pass and they want to oppose Trump. And because even if you're going to say they just want illegals to vote, it maybe, but it still doesn't even happen that often to sell your soul like this. So I'm genuinely baffled by this stuff. Genuinely baffled. So let me go to this 21 million figure, because this is probably going to be like, what? when you see this, okay? So millions of Americans don't have documents proving their citizenship readily available. So again, this is the Brennan Center, and a lot of people, when you hear this 21 million figure, it is coming from these people, okay? Last year, the Brennan Center partnered with Vote Riders, the Center for Democracy and Civic Engagement at the University of Maryland, and PublicWise to survey Americans about what identification they possess and what they know about voter ID laws in their state. We also asked respondents whether they had documents that prove their citizenship, a passport, birth certificate, or naturalization papers readily available. Okay? Our research indicates that more than 9% of American citizens of voting age, or 21.3 million people, don't have proof of citizenship readily available. There are a myriad reasons for this. The documents might be in the home of another family member or in a safety deposit box. And at least 3.8 million don't have these documents at all, often because they were lost, destroyed, and stolen. So is that number just like they did the survey from? I tried to find how many people were like asked the questions, but they got the 9% out of it. And so the 9%, they get the 21.3 million figure. And that's just people who are voting age. So I'm not surprised, I guess, in the other article where they said that a lot of young people would be disenfranchised, because a lot of young people, I assume, don't have their documents readily available. A lot of people's parents still hold on to that stuff until, I don't know, they move away or something like that. I didn't have I never had my birth certificate, I guess. Like my mom had that. my mom had that. So since it was in another family member's house, that would mean that I would be a part of the 9%, if it just means that like it's not accessible to me, even though I could go drive like 10-15 minutes and go get it. But if we're just counting not readily accessible as in it's just at another family member's house, I guess I would fit in that number. Am I disenfranchised by having to prove that I have a birth certificate to register to vote? No. Or I've told this story. You guys know my mom passed away, but she had like our documents and stuff like that. So my dad needed his birth certificate for some reason, and so he went through her papers and all kinds of different stuff, and all of our birth certificates were together. And I know they're all together because my sister needed to go get her birth certificate before he started looking through them some time ago, and she knew they were all together. He lost them. He lost them. Don't know where they are. Combed his room, combed through all of her papers, and she like had so many papers, bank statements, mail, you know, whatever, just so much stuff. And I just combed through it. I got my other sister to help after I couldn't find it. We couldn't find what he did with our birth certificates. And the reason why I needed my birth certificate is because I was getting a passport, an expedited passport for my Israel trip that I went on. And so with expedited passports, you have to I guess unless it's like a death or something, you have to get it within like you can only get it within like 14 days of your trip when you're leaving. You have to have information about where you're going, like proof that you're actually going, like a ticket or like something about hotel or whatever. It's at the discretion, all this stuff at the of the agents. And so I needed proof of where I was going. I needed like an ID. So I had my ID, my real ID, and I needed some kind of proof of citizenship. And I had my old passport, but it expired a long time ago, so I did not know if they were going to accept it. And when I say expired a long time ago, I was a minor when I got it. And I haven't renewed it. Last time I used it, when I was in the 10th grade, I went to the Philippines. I graduated from high school in 2007. So it's been a minute. So I didn't know if they'd accept it. So I'm like, okay. I got nervous and I was like, maybe let me go get the birth certificate because I don't know about the passport. And then I discovered that they're all misplaced somewhere. So I went to the county office in the morning before my appointment at the passport place in Detroit, and I got my documents in like, I don't know, 15 minutes because I went very like as soon as they opened basically. And I paid like $20 for 2 copies. So now I have my passport. I decided to keep it myself. I mean, not my passport, but I do have my passport, but my birth certificates. And I have 2 copies. It was really easy to get, and people can get them by mail, online. They have the county send them to them. You know, they can be in a different state. They're very accessible. I understand that they said 21 million Americans don't have them readily accessible, but even an example they used about it not being readily accessible is in a safety deposit box. So if you put your birth certificate in a safety deposit box and like, is it readily available? It's like, no, because it's at the bank. That seems crazy to me. So when my birth certificates were actually lost, I wasn't in the 9%. I was in the smaller percentage. I was part of the 3.8 million who had it lost. But I literally got it replaced the next day. So when Democrats are throwing around this number on TV, on X, on Facebook, on TikTok, and again, I saw a big TikTok creators today throwing around that number, and they weren't, I don't think they were doing it maliciously. They were just like presenting what people were saying in that particular research, and it is a common talking point. I don't think, again, they were maybe doing it malicious. I think the video they present was mostly fair. But people can go ahead and just look further into the research that people are presenting, and it's really not a big deal. I'm sorry, not readily available. So what? So go pick it up. You can find a way to get it. So that's a big issue there. But there's something else that was funny to me about some of this data. Okay, we also uncovered evidence of racial disparities. Oh my gosh, racial disparities. And these numbers, oh my. While just over 8% of self-identified white American citizens don't have citizenship documents readily available, the number is nearly 11% when it comes to Americans of color. Wow. That's a big difference. 8% of white Americans, but 11% of Americans of color. Wow. Slavery. Just this is Jim Crow 2.0. Do you see how stupid this is? Well, like I when I looked at this the other day, I was like, that's the number? That's the difference? That's what they're tripping about? The difference of 8 to 11%? That's the big racial disparity? Oh, this is really going to hurt black people. Oh, it's really going to hurt Hispanic people. Oh. And it's American. The 11% is Americans of color. So that's just all the ones that aren't white, right? I'm floored. I'm floored by this. Convenience matters when it comes to consistent participation in American elections. Convenience really does matter if you want consistent not just consistent participation, but super high participation. Like people were so floored with the crazy numbers that like occurred in 2020. And people were like, even some people who voted for Joe Biden or Democrats who didn't like Trump, I heard them entertain the idea that the election, like maybe something fishy did happen because I just can't believe that more people voted for Joe Biden than Obama. But it's not because Joe Biden was more popular than Obama, or people just were more excited to do that, or people thought, well, maybe they thought it was more of an existential kind of threat election because folks didn't like Trump. But the most obvious answer is the mail-in ballots changed a lot. And it wasn't just that was readily available. There was such a pressure to also do the mail-in voting stuff. Like there was I was watching a Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy on Bounce TV. If you don't know what Bounce TV is it's like a local, like urban network or whatever, I guess you could say, that shows movies like vampires in Brooklyn, right? So I'm watching that, and commercial comes on, and it's like, you make sure that you vote. People are going to be able to know, or something like that. So make sure you vote. It was very eerie, kind of. It felt kind of like a threat, like people are going to be able to look up and see, right? And I'm like, that's strange. And then they showed like some Democrat commercials, like vote for this Democrat, vote for this Democrat, vote for this. And then they kept showing the commercial again, like people are going to know, people are going to, and it was just really, really out of pocket, really creepy. And people were sending like mail to people saying, hey, people, you can look up your voting record and all this other stuff. And I think giving people the impression that, oh gosh, if I don't vote for this election, then the people are going to blame me, people are going to harass me. I think that's the impression that people are getting, because if you recall, when Trump won the first time, people are so mad and blaming folks, but people who sat out, like, oh my gosh, you voted for third party. So I know people want to vote. They should have the ability to do that if they are eligible to do that. But if people also don't want to vote, that's also their right to not do that as well. I said this last week. If people, I'm not so excited because X amount of million people voted. I would rather people who do vote be informed about their vote. it's really alarming watching some videos like, like I'm voting for Zoran Mamdani, and then people don't know things that he said. People don't know much about how he's plan to implement some of his policies. They just have a hope and a prayer. And he said some, I understand he's charismatic, and a lot of people have this certain ideals, and they want free stuff, and they some of the stuff sounded good. I'm not saying they're like totally ignorant of some of the things that he said, but as far as like how he can actually do stuff, and who he is as a person, or other just things that he's said, and what he believes at his core, as opposed to when he's running for office, a lot of people don't know those things, you know or I remember when, after Obama won, in 2012, I guess, um, I was really upset. And I was working at Target at the time, and I went to work, and, and so I barely got any sleep, because I went in at like 4 in the morning to do the trucks. And I remember asking people, because they were all happy and stuff. I'm like, do you know what Benghazi is, or what happened in Benghazi? And nobody knew. Nobody knew. I'm just like, that's okay. I'm not, when you ask a Kamala Harris supporter, like, what does she support, or things that she said and she doesn't know, and they just know that she's not Trump. And if people want to vote for those reasons, then I'm not saying they don't have the right, but I'm just saying I would feel better if people just had kind of full knowledge of these individuals, and what they stand for, and what they personally believe, and not what their friends said, or what Katy Perry or Oprah or whoever said when they go to the polls. I'm not impressed by big numbers. I'm impressed by people who actually care about what's going on in their community and in their country. And again, I'm not saying that they can't vote. I'm just not personally happy, when you pick up when kids go register to vote the day of the vote, to go cast their vote, because that gives me the impression that, well, they're not terribly informed, if they had to wait that late to the last minute to do all that stuff, you know so I so saying convenience matters when it comes to consistent participation in American elections. I think it is easy to vote, and it's easy to prove your citizenship, you know so saying that you have to have your birth certificate when you register to vote is not a crazy ask. It's just not. It's still convenient. um you know it, these talking points just kind of floor me. So anyway, they said, even if a citizen is certain that a passport or birth certificate is in a safety deposit box at the bank, voters are busy. Okay. Voters are busy. Voters are busy, so they can't go to the bank to pick up their birth certificate, guys. An additional trip to the bank would surely prevent some voters from registering to vote. Because adults don't go to the bank. Someone type this up. An additional trip to the bank would surely prevent some voters from registering to vote if such documents were required. We consider a document to be readily available if respondents could quickly find it, and if they had to show it tomorrow. So, yeah. A trip to the bank. We know when elections are. You can register to vote before the election. Hopefully, you're registering to vote sometime before the primary. Primaries are important. Everybody complains about having only 2 options, and having to pick between, like, two evils or whatever, the better evil, I guess, two bad options. Well, maybe people would have better options when you get to the end if more people were informed when you're going through the primary seasons. And so many people want, they're hoping that the worst person on the other side of the aisle is the one who gets through. Maybe we should have the best people. Maybe that should be our attitudes, that the best people from both sides make it through the primary. So even if our guy doesn't win, that we won't be concerned about it being the end of democracy or blah, 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 when it's all said and done. Right. So, hopefully you're registering to vote and you're participating in other elections and not just trying to register to vote the night before. Okay? Or the day of. Because who else would this apply to that this would be such a problem? It goes on to say that they've known this for a while, that they've done research in 2006. They still talking about it disproportionately impacts people of color, which so the survey reached 2,000. Okay, here's a number: 2,386 U.S. citizens age 18 or older, but between September 12th and October 4th, 2023. So that was when the survey was conducted. The survey was conducted using the SSRS opinion panel, web and phone calls, and prepaid cell phone numbers. 2,155 SSR's opinion panel respondents took the survey on the web. 110 SSR's opinion panel respondents took the survey over the phone, and 121 respondents took the survey over the phone call to prepaid cells. The margin of error is 2.6%. So yeah. So here's the thing. I've said this before. I'll say it again. If it's not a priority to you, I don't think that's great, but I guess it's okay. Like if you don't want, if politics isn't your thing, if you're going to check out or whatever, these are things that are going to affect your life. You should really care about the local stuff, when they want to raise their taxes, for the school so they can fix their parking lot, or just for your property taxes, all kinds of different stuff. Different ballot proposals. People should be informed about those things. And I'd rather them be informed because, sheep are easy to herd. So if you don't know what's going on, and people are very good at manipulating people's feels and so on, they'll do all kinds of campaigns that are on, and they'll get you somehow, whether it's commercials on TV, ads that you see online. Organizations will pay influencers, or maybe they'll pay their management firms to have different scripts, and they'll put out different information and so on. And in one way or another, they're going to influence people around you. So just go on and do your own research about what all this stuff means. But as far as the SAVE Act, I'm not saying there's not like legitimate things you can be concerned about. As a matter of fact, I think there's something that actual Republicans would raise an eyebrow to, because for all of this talk about, oh my gosh, it's so hard, it's going to disenfranchise so many people, what about women when they go ahead and they get married and their birth certificate doesn't match their actual name? Well, you can go register. When you register to vote, you can have your marriage license, and they'll be able to determine, like, hey, this is this person, they have this documentation about the name change here. It's really that simple. Now the law gives, it's pretty, I guess you could say, vague or broad or whatever, as far as the permission structure they give to the states, or like figure out basically how you're going to do this process of, making sure that they're the documents or whatever are fine. So there is a credible debate or argument to say, well, if they're going to pass the bill, they should have a set policy in mind. I get that. There's also the argument that they should have some leeway to how the states are going to figure that out as far as their structure of like proving like, hey, I am actually who I say because they have this name change or whatever, because states are different, you know. States are different. We are not all uniform. So I can see it both ways. I can see it both ways. But as far as so I think there's a legitimate thing to debate about that. Saying black people are going to be disenfranchised because their birth certificate in a safety deposit box or whatever. I don't think that's a legitimate argument. I think that's really stupid. I do. I do. And I if you give it to me, I'm not gonna have much respect for you. Either you're lost in the sauce, maybe you're a little dumb, or you're just pushing propaganda. It's, you know, maybe you can make a good argument. I will listen to you, but it just sounds really stupid. It sounds really stupid, guys. So okay, sounds really, really dumb. But the thing that some Republicans might not actually like about this is that you still might be in a situation where you might not have your documents together when you go register to vote, and you can sign the you know, the people are going to give you the registration and stuff or let you be registered. You can sign an affidavit and to say like, hey, you know, I am a citizen and stuff. And the clerks or whatever, people at the Secretary of State office or whatever, could be like, okay, well, I believe enough that they have their stuff together that they're, you know, a citizen, so they're going to go ahead and, you know, give it to them. And then you sign the affidavit under like penalty of you know, perjury and all that stuff. So there's that. But I mean, you can do that when you go, like Republicans like, no, you need to vote, you need to have your ID to vote, you need to have your ID to vote. And you can go to vote and not have an ID. And I don't know how this is in like every state or whatever, but actually sign an affidavit that you are who you say you are and stuff, and not actually have it on you in those kinds of situations. So it's still not a, you absolutely need to have this document here in order to be registered to vote. There's still like circumstances where they're giving you wiggle room if you look at the actual SAVE Act. So by the way, you guys can look up the SAVE Act. It's not long. But I'll just read the summary as soon as I magnify this page so I can read with my not great eyes. The bill requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Specifically, the bill prohibits states from accepting and processing an application to register to vote in federal elections unless the applicant presents documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The bill specifies what documents are considered acceptable proof of U.S. citizenship, such as identification that complies with the Real ID Act of 2005 that indicates U.S. citizenship. Further, the bill, 1, prohibits states from registering an individual to vote in federal elections unless at the time of the individual applies to register to vote, the individual provides documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, and 2, requires states to establish an alternative process under which an applicant may submit other evidence to demonstrate U.S. citizenship. Each state must take affirmative steps on an ongoing basis to ensure that only U.S. citizens are registered to vote, which shall include establishing a program to identify individuals who are not U.S. citizens using information supplied by certain sources. Additionally, states must remove non-citizens from their official list of eligible voters. The bill allows for a private right of action against an election official who registers an applicant to vote in a federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The bill establishes criminal penalties for certain offenses, including registering an applicant to vote in a federal election who fails to present a documentary proof of citizenship. Yeah, somebody just make sure they're citizens, I guess. Do your job, do it right. um, yeah, if you want to debate some aspects of this bill, like I said, I can understand and it's fine. But the black people are going to be disenfranchised. Hispanic women are going to be disenfranchised. There's this big racial disparity. It doesn't make any sense. And even if they're the case, it is the case that there are some people who don't have a birth certificate or haven't seen it in years and have trouble getting their documentation or whatever. I still think it's important to make sure that people who are registering to vote are U.S. citizens. Is it? Am I crazy? It's a right of American citizens. How do we know you are one? How do we know? How do we know? How does the federal government know? How do we know it's you? I agree it's a right, but how do we know it's you? By proving your citizenship? Like how do we know? Um so, someone said that the best people are not running for office. I have a feeling. Uh yeah, well, there's plenty of good people who do run for office. And there's a lot of really good people who try to run for, I mean, first you start off locally and stuff, but man, politics is such a dirty game. And there's some grimy folks and good people get burned out quick. And there's a lot of people who just don't want to be part of it. Like people ask me all the time, like, oh, or they say all the time, like, why don't you run for office? Which I have done that before, but like local stuff. But like, why don't you do it again? Oh, you'd be great. And it just seems like the most annoying thing in the world. Just sometimes watching stuff on C-SPAN and everybody, I don't know, getting up there to get their 5-second clip of fame while they interrogate different witnesses and like they ask them a question like, I'm reclaiming my time, and just stuff like that is just so annoying. I mean, because if you want attention, you gotta, I guess, get attention. But I would just kind of want to be there and do my work. But which is, I guess, a lot of what I had to do at other jobs anyway, and was just kind of surrounded by people who kind of annoy me too, I guess. But not in their jobs that were better than others or whatever. But like I'd be just kind of like, I'm here to do my job. Like what? Like I'm when I worked in the Michigan Republican Party, my sister also worked there, but she worked like in the field and stuff. And so, and I worked at headquarters in Lansing. And so they would ask her, like, does your sister like her job? And she's like, yeah, she loves her job. But people didn't know because I didn't talk to people. I would just like, I mean, I talked to my office mate who I share an office with and stuff. But I would mostly just kind of go in and do my work because that's what I was there to do. Like, I didn't really go around for like coffee breaks and just gab to folks. And sometimes they would all do Nerf gun wars, and like everybody in the office had a Nerf gun, and sometimes they would fight each other. I never owned a Nerf gun. My parents didn't really do that. So I was like the only one who didn't have one. So I just was there doing my work. So it would be really kind of weird to me, especially how annoying a lot of these people seem in real life when they are doing their grandstanding. That'd be like, bro, chill out. And then to be like different to your face, and then to go on CNN talking crap. It couldn't be me. Try Jesus, don't try me. Like I hate that. Like one time I was on Let It Rip. It's a local politics show. And I was in the green room talking, with with different folks, and one person was a independent, and we were all cool. It seemed like we agreed on stuff. And then as soon as the cameras start rolling, he's all super aggressive and all like anti-Trump and all this stuff. I'm just like, this wasn't you like 5 seconds ago. I hate stuff like that. I hate stuff like that. And I know I don't know, I feel like I'm an unusual person in this space. I'm not saying there's not other real people in the like talk online space, but I know there's a lot of people who, I don't know, I guess say stuff for clicks, but I just, will tell you how I feel. And I just want to do responsible work and be honest about my work. And I don't like the fakeness of politics. I don't know. It just seems like a really really annoying job if to be like a senator or a congressperson. And then and then like sometimes you could do like really principled votes and stuff like, no, this spends too much money. I know there's times you got to compromise on stuff, but like if you don't do everything perfectly, you might get primaried or something. Trump be like, we got to get rid of Christina. She didn't vote for my big beautiful bill or something, like big gigantic. I'm not saying I'm necessarily wouldn't have voted for that, but like I'm just giving an example. I just, it just doesn't seem like my world. Like I appreciate when people bring that kind of stuff up because they like my content, so they trust me and think that I would do a good job. But if you want to support me, I just, I guess try to support the reach of Black tea, and we'll try to change hearts and minds, and hopefully someone else will do the deed and we can support them. But it ain't gonna be me, Chief. Someone said our 15-year-old daughter got her ID and she did it herself. Good on her. Reasonable, responsible adults, man. Reasonable, responsible adults. It's just really that simple. Anyway, that's all I really got to say about the SAVE Act. I don't know what's going to happen here with it, but it's not, if you're concerned that if they don't get this passed, that it's just like a make or break situation, that the midterms are going to be rigged or something. That's not the case. I don't like situations like in the last election in Michigan. There's an example of a Chinese, I believe it was a Chinese student, who went ahead and voted in our election, and his vote counted just as much as mine. I don't want that to happen. So if they can take extra steps and precautions to stop that, that's good. But people just trying to shrug off, like, hey, we should make sure people provide citizenship and prove it when they register to vote, and be like, oh, well, it's rare. Okay. it shouldn't be the case that is actually happening, though. If we can go from rare to like it virtually doesn't happen at all, I guess, then and if you do, there's going to be some really really harsh penalties, which that person did get charged. I don't know what ended up happening in the update of the case, but they did get charged at the time. It's just I don't appreciate the talking points. So anyway, I'm glad that we're able to talk about what this 21 million number is, as far as a readily available number. And it's just like a day. They said they consider readily available, and the eligible people are just people over the age of 18, so that's what's going on. I know. I think Trump also wants a signature piece of legislation signed because I think it's likely we'll probably lose the House. We'll see during the midterms. And then his like, what is he going to get done after that besides sign some budget bills? So they're going to want this done. I think there's other things that maybe they could shore up as far as like immigration, that they could be focusing on. Maybe they will. But things that he's done via executive order can obviously be undone by the next person. So I would appreciate some more legislative victories, because I don't know how much he's going to have his legs chopped up off out from underneath him after this particular election. Anyway, as someone said, as safe and rare as abortion. It's I don't know. I'd have to look up. I don't know what those exact numbers are. We'd have to find that out. Abortion isn't very rare. It not my it was happening like a million times a year. I mean, there's obviously a lot of Americans, but it's a lot of abortions going on. The rare talking point they use is like rare that it happens after 21 weeks or whatever. But it's still like late term abortions are still like, if you're talking about like 1%, that's still a big number. It's not an insignificant number. It's definitely higher than unarmed Black people being killed by police. We'll put it that way. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to blacktunies.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost to stream, run my side other gets so you guys can support. I very much appreciate and appreciate you guys. You guys can check out different merch that's available on the site, and you guys can check out different books and stuff that I've written. There's a link in the description to take you to my book Bigger if you guys want to check that out. God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.